that the scientists from URI with whom we were planning to speak are here and available to have the same discussion, whether a couple of other folks are in the room or not. And a couple of other folks being other members of the Sea Level Rise Committee. We made sure that we had less than a quorum here today. So there's no committee business, and we can just go right into our discussion with Annette Grilly and her team of scientists who are with us today to talk about combining monitoring and numerical simulations of nature and natural and nature-based solutions to coastal erosion. So maybe we could start with introductions. And if everyone could please use the microphone for the people on the Zoom and on YouTube. Okay, Annette, you want to start?
Yeah. So I'm Annette Grilly. I'm a research professor at the University of Rhode Island in ocean engineering. And we just got a recent sea grant to study the vulnerability of Block Island and try to see if potentially we could find some nature and nature-based future solution to help the resilience of the island at specific area. So my interest of being here, it's having all the information, from you, which area you worry about, what you wish would be different. And then I'm going to show you the type of things that we can do. We cannot solve solution. We can do a few things, and that's what I'm going to show you here. So we are a big team. There is a modeling team which is doing, numerical simulation, trying to simulate what the nature does, and then we can make scenario and see if we change something, how would it impact the island. So the modeling team, it's me and Stefan Grilly there. So maybe I should let everybody introduce itself, and my student Chao Yi and Chi Wei, who is also a professor at the University of Rhode Island. So he's not specifically in this project, but he's working in the same area. So we have same interest. I'm going to stop now because I'm going to. So, and then there is the field team, which is those two and other people. So Nate and Chris, but I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. I'm not going to be too motherly. I have a tendency.
You want to say something?
I think that's enough.
Okay.
It's enough. I'm sorry.
So Stefan Grilly, same name, husband, but also a professor of ocean engineering and oceanography at the University of Rhode Island.
Hi, everybody. Nate Vinatero. I'm the science director at URI Coastal Institute. And I guess I'm here today sort of representing the field team. Our colleague, Brian Oakley from Eastern Connecticut is actually, I believe, on the island somewhere doing field work right now. So he couldn't be here, but we both have similar backgrounds, coastal geology, and he and I will be sort of coordinating the field data collection that'll help validate these models.
And hello, everybody. My name is Christopher Damon. I am a research associate with the Environmental Data Center on campus. And my role in this project is primarily to take the output from the modelers and translate that into online visualization and analysis tools to help make sense of all the work that's being done, and then consolidate it into a single portal where people can access that information. And if I may, there is one more person who couldn't make it, another professor too. Yeah, but Chris Baxter. So he's a geotechnical engineer, also professor of ocean engineering. And he has worked on dune reinforcement, geobags, and those kinds of things. And Pam Rubinoff, who is an extension a specialist and also a coastal specialist at Sea Grant and Coastal Resource Center. And I don't know, she may be associated with the Coastal Institute as well.
So Pam is usually doing, running those town meetings and getting stakeholder involvement and data and input. She will be part of the project, but she couldn't be here today.
So Pam, both Pam and Chris Baxter are known to us. Chris Baxter brought out the students with Malcolm Spalding. They did a capstone class out here, so they were out here for a full academic year, looking at ideas for how to protect Corn Neck Road. It was very interesting. And then that's Chris Baxter. And Pam Rubinoff has been coming out for years. She was involved in the outreach and extension aspects of the Corn Neck Road study. I think she was helpful to us in 2013 when we did the Corn Neck Road study of 2013. We did another one in 2017. She was helpful with that. Sea Grant's been really helpful all the way along. And now they're funding this project that we're going to learn a little bit more about. But what we really want from what the scientists need from us is, what are our problems? What are the things that they should be trying to solve? We did show them around a little bit on Crescent Beach, but we also want to hear from you on what you think are the biggest problems on Block Island, where we should be focusing, where the town should be focusing attention. So Annette, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, so I just have a few slides to summarize the project, so I'm not going to talk for a long time. And then, hopefully we can have the discussion. So I wrote the summary of the project thinking that the screen would be bigger, but I made a mistake. So okay, yeah, unfortunately we cannot read it, so I'm gonna talk to it. So the summary of the project, we have two main objectives. So the first one, it's to understand. So understand how the hazard works. So basically, you have extreme storm. I'm from Narragansett. We're exposed to extreme storm. So we want to understand how these storms are destroying our shoreline. So we know what's happening, but we want to know the details. So once we can really understand all the physical processes, we can simulate them and we can reproduce them with a numerical simulation, with a software. And so once we're happy with that, we can change it and pretend different scenario. We can say, let's say that we would have the beach we nourish here, or we would have a reef, or whatever we can design. We would put it in the model and we would see what would be the new response of the system. So it's called scenario-based simulation. So this is basically, the main objective of the thing. So the method, what I'm saying, it's modeling. We use a model, we make simulation. We use a scenario-based approach, and we will do it systematically with or without nature and nature-based feature, which means that we will simulate a storm, and then we will say, if it would be different, if we would have a reef, what would be the response? To be able to do that, we need data. We need to know really well the system, so we need data. So that's why we have a field team who is going to collect data continuously during the project. It's only a 2-year project. Seems long, but it's short for such a big problem. And so we would have 3, so maybe we can talk into details about the data, but basically we will collect, we have Brian Oakley, who is doing Transect, looking at the profile of the dune before a storm, after the storm. Nate is running LiDAR, and Nate and Chris trying to have the 3D visualization of what the dune is before and after the storm. And then we're going to implement also a crowdsource-based monitoring, which is Ghost Snap. So I don't know if you already talked about it. So it's basically you go to the beach and you're going to have a stand and you put your phone and you take a picture. And this picture is going to be sent somewhere. And all those pictures are going to be kept at the end. If you have enough picture, you can see the change of the shoreline. So you can basically, you keep this data and you basically keeps the change of the shoreline. So you see the seasonal change, and you can see decadals if you do it long enough. So it's kind of easy and relatively accurate for small stretch of the beach. So we'll do that too. And the outcome, as Chris was saying, he will gonna do like an interactive website, and after you can go, you can zoom on your area and see the results. See, just if we would put a reef, what would it do if this, December storm or a sandy storm would come back? This is what the response would be. And we also said we would do a workshop to explain everything. So keep going. So this is what I'm always showing, how it works. So I don't know if it's make it easier or more complicated. It's kind of a standard conceptual framework in coastal resilience. So we have a source, which is on the left. And again, I apologize, I thought it would be bigger on the screen. But so we have a source of hazard. We have a pathway, the storm propagates, it propagates across a dune or across a reef. And then you have a response and you look at the difference. With solution, the green is the solution. So it's what I said in another format. So I'm going to skip that. And I'm going to show one of the examples that we did on the South Shore. So this is simulating Sandy, basically in real time, and showing the morphological change on the shoreline. So this is Green Hill Pond and Trustom Pond, Green Hill in the middle, the beginning of Ninigret at the left, and Trustom at the center. So basically, you see the sea level. So there is only the sea level, not the waves there, but the wave are in the model. You have the wave action too. And you see in real time, if you look at closely, how the shoreline is changed. So you see the erosion in real time. So I have like a kind of snapshot. If I would stop the thing at the end of the storm at Trustom Pond. So during Sandy, we observe what you see on the left. You see a big breach on. Can I go with my mouse? Maybe not. Doesn't work. You see, yeah, here. You see me moving, yeah, there. So you see the breach on Trustom Pond, and this is what the model did. Basically, we reproduce the same thing. So it's to kind of show an example how it works. So this is a simulation with assuming that at the same site, Ninigret Pond, we would have no vegetation. This is going to be the left. And on the right, it would be like optimal vegetation. We would have 9 bushes behind the tall grass. So I'm going to put it on vegetation, no vegetation on the left and vegetation on the right. And this is the induced current. So basically what you're going to see is the more yellow and red you have, the stronger current you have. And you see on the left that no vegetation, it's overwashing across the dune. So where you have this big dark area, it's a dune which is overwashed. So overwashed and breach on the left, and it's looping, it's going to do it again. If you focus on looking at the right, when you have vegetation, you're going to see a lot less overwash. So those are current. You see left, nothing happened when it's all red on the, so you still have a little bit, but less. So this is an example, and we can change that. We can put trees and we can put tall grass and see what it would do. So another example is we imagined that on the South Shore, we would have a submerged reef. We call that also an artificial reef. So it would be like a detached submerged breakwater. And if you put it in optimally, and it's not just put it right there, so there are methods and rules to do it, it protects the shore. So at the top, no reef, the way it is, and it's still sandy. And in the bottom is going to be with a reef. So up, it should start. So you see the little dot there, it's a reef. Maybe I can go there. Can I go? Yeah. This is like the detached leaves, and this is the shoreline. You see all the action, all the current on the shore eroding. If you have the reef, the waves are gonna break, you're gonna have current around. But you see the shoreline is protected, you have no land. So basically a lot is going. So we can quantify that and we can measure what's exactly the difference. And it's relatively well predicted. So now, this is the question. This is my last slide. I said I wouldn't talk for a long time. What are we gonna do here? And it's the thing, which scenario would you wish we would try? So easiest one on the left, vegetation. We try to optimize the vegetation on the dune and we see what difference it's gonna make. Reinforced dune, you still have some example as a other spot along the shore where we could imagine a reinforced dune and see what it would do. Beach nourishment, we can assume we put sand artificially, we see what's happening. And then the last one is the artificial reef. So this is kind of the standard one. We can combine them. The key is where are the site, which matters to you, to try to do that and to look at what it would do. And then what I put in red is interrogation point, other idea, do something else. There are other things possible. And do you wish we do a comparison with what we call gray solution, which would be, for example, you know, emerged breakwater, which is supposedly not green. Is it something we can try? You know, it's a simulation, you know, it doesn't hurt. It's just to show the difference. So that's it. So I didn't want to talk too much. I just wanted to give you a rough idea of what we can do. And, you know, if it can be helpful, it would be more interesting than being just an academic exercise. So basically, we need your input.
And if I
Yeah, you
just
want
may
to-
add one thing.
It's my husband, so you need to have something.
No, but the purpose of those scenario simulations is that to give you ideas to make informed decisions. I understand that you got a grant from the state. So how are you going to best invest those funds? So if we can, you know, the timing is good. We have this study. So we can study a few of those scenarios. And then based on that, you will know a lot more about your system and what would work better or not as well. So that's the idea. But we're not consulting engineers. We're not going to do the design. We're just going to do, you know, hypothetical scenarios and put them out there, right?
So this is Judy Gray again. And so the elegance of this and the timing of it is that the money that we got from the state is an implementation, and it has a little bit of study in it, but really what you guys are doing is so much more sophisticated than what we would get if we were doing it. So I really appreciate this opportunity for us to, you know, try different scenarios in the models before and see what works. We have, just so you know, been based on feedback from the public primarily and from previous studies, we have really focused on Corn Neck Road and the protection of Corn Neck Road and at that as the main conduit connecting, you know, the north and the south ends of the island. But if there are other areas that you really think we should be looking at, I'd love to hear about that. I think that it would be interesting to see all of these different scenarios. We've got already a reinforced dune scenario happening on Crescent Beach. We already are doing beach nourishment of form. And certainly Kim has Gaffett in the back. Thank you for coming, Kim, has been, will you dismiss that, please? Yeah, thank you. Marianne can Zoom from someplace else. But so, you know, Kim has been very involved in putting vegetation. Whenever sand is put someplace. She and the kids are out there planting grasses to try and keep it in place for as long as possible. The artificial reef is fascinating, and how it, how would we do something like that, and how would we do that in a way that we could get it approved? What we don't want to design, we don't want to study something that's impossible to get through CRMC, but that it's very intriguing to see what would happen especially at the south end of Gordon Neck Road, where the revetment is. How can we, break down the wave energy on that part of the beach? Anyway, I'll shut up now, and I really appreciate any of you in the audience. If you have ideas or concerns, that you please feel free to express them now.
Hi, my name is Elliot Nirenberg. I really appreciate what you're all doing, and to me, it seems obvious that Corneck Road is the main immediate problem. But have you looked at all or considering what's happening on the South Bluffs as erosion there goes back more and more? As you know, we had to move the lighthouse 30 years ago, and it keeps eroding that whole area. It's less critical in terms of their homes and the lighthouse as opposed to so many other people being involved. But is that being looked at all?
I'll take that question. As far as I understand, the geological processes that are going on the South Bluffs, that's primarily freshwater erosion from the inside, and then the bluff slumps down, and then the sea eats it away. And by the way, it's a primary source of sand for all of our beaches. All of the sand on our beaches comes from the erosion of the cliffs. We're on a one-way trip to oblivion here on Block Island. We're in a road to nothing eventually. So, the eroding bluffs isn't a bad thing, is what I'm saying. It's part of the mechanism that creates our beaches. And if you do an aerial flight sometime on the helicopter, you can see, depending on how calm the water is, but you can see the swirls of sand moving in the alongshore current, and it's from the south to the north. It's at the bluffs. What I've observed, if it's actually from the west to the east, but that was just the day that I was out flying. But it's really cool to see. Yeah, and now, so in terms of addressing it, this group is not looking at freshwater erosion from the inside of a bluff. However, it is being monitored by Brian Oakley. He's flying drones, and they've been doing a lot of GIS-based measurements, but it's a monitoring program, what's happening there. And I don't know how much they're looking at any kind of mediation. I think it's just, helping us manage our expectations of how much is going to erode. Also, erosion happens in big chunks. We like to think about it as a calm, natural, gradual process, but it's just not. It's I just saw a picture today that was on Facebook, on one of the Block Island pages on Facebook, of a big slump from the South Cliffs. And that was news for me. Anyway, yeah, come on up, Arlene, and please introduce yourself.
Arlene Tunney, I have a question. On beach nourishment, is it just plantings? I know when I was a kid on the south shore of Long Island, they would bring mounds of sand in to enlarge the beaches. Is that considered beach nourishment?
Yes, yes.
And as you said, you have to bring a lot, because you don't just put sand on the beach, because you have an equilibrium profile, which means, from your point where you have the sand to the, trying to be clear, we call that the depth of closure, where you have no wave action, not too much action. If you look at that shape underwater, it's kind of a profile which is in equilibrium, an equilibrium between the type of sand and your wave action. So it stays the same. So it's a little bit steeper when you have a storm and then it's come back. But so if you add sand, you're gonna change that and it's not gonna last, it's gonna collapse and the sand is gonna go down. So in order to have a really efficient beach nourishment, you need to think about the sand which is gonna go to fill this new shape to keep this equilibrium profile, which means that basically you multiply your volume by, I would say, a factor of 3 at least, so it would be efficient. So it's a lot. So when people say we put sand and it's gone, it's normal. It's not gonna stay there. So you have to add 3 times more, I would say, to have what you put there staying there.
Yeah, come on up.
Temporarily, staying temporarily.
Yes, please do.
I'm Kira Hall. I live in Boston most of the time. I work in the environmental field, so this is all very interesting. Thank you for being here. I guess my question is about the artificial reefs, seeing the impact that the modeling showed, and you were saying it may be, that's the type of thing that might be hard to get approved. So I guess I'm curious if there are negative impacts to like ecosystems or anything that is a consideration for the artificial reefs, or
Yeah, it would obviously. Obviously it would be. It's what why. Yes, I do. Why I have. So there are many reef in the world, and not all of them are monitored. Some are monitored. And when we were at that ICCA International Conference of Engineering, I cited because it's really renowned and you have real research about it, about good research. So we had 2 years ago a presentation about specifically the ecological impact of artificial reef. All were in the Caribbean. It was not here. All were monitoring 2 to 5 years, and all were totally positive in terms of ecological impact. Basically, it's going to depend on the material that you're going to bring, but the idea is to have material which would have attract anything, and then you would have kind of a new ecosystem which would come up. I'm not an ecologist. I cannot tell you what would happen here, but from the one who have been studied, it seems that naturally nature is stronger than anything, and it's coming back. And so we have, so at NOAA, there is somebody studying artificial reef, and I forgot his name, at URI. So it's, if something would be accepted, I think it would be a nice study to do with ecologists, but I'm pretty sure that it would be positive.
If I may add one thing, we have an example here at the Block Island Wind Farm. So each foundation is protected by a capping to prevent scouring, erosion. And so studies have showed that those protections around the bottom of each wind turbine have attracted fish and ecosystems that have grown there. And that's consistent with much longer studies that have been done in the North Sea. For over 20, 25 years, they've had wind farms there, and there is a reef effect. So all the foundations of the farm actually attract. Initially, the noise and the turbidity is going to scare away a lot of the fish and other fauna and flora, but then they come back in greater number. And that is, I couldn't tell you the species, but there is a report for the Block Island Wind Farm, which is very positive. So there is no reason why it would not happen off the beach. It's the same ecosystem, basically.
Nigel Grindley. With apologies to Malcolm Spaulding, I remember him saying a couple of years ago, actually, in an email to me, that he couldn't imagine an artificial reef surviving the effects of waves from 100-year storm here on Block Island. And I guess my question is, I mean, I love the idea of doing something to, as it were, take some of the energy out of the waves. And the question is, has artificial reef technology improved so that they are more survivable in terms of
Yeah.
the sort of storms that we would be likely
But
to
I'm
to
starting
have?
and you will finish. So the reef ball wouldn't work. The reef ball, you know, that everybody is using.
Yes,
Reef ball
yes.
wouldn't work. Not done for this time. So basically, it is what we call a submerged breakwater. And this has been done for years. So Stefan is more experienced
Right,
than I
so
do.
I happen to
but-
teach the class on design of coastal structures. And Malcolm is a good colleague, and, you know, has been my colleague for 35 years, but I'm happy to disagree on that. It can be designed. So, you know, the coastal engineering manual from the US Corps and, you know, Army Corps of Engineers will tell you how heavy the stones have to be, how you have to design your core, whether it's an emerged or submerged breakwater. If you know the forcing from waves, you can make it stable. The question, of course, is depending on the depths. Now, if you go in greater depths, your waves are going to be bigger, the reef is going to be more expensive. But if you do a fairly shallow reef where the surf zone already starts offshore and the waves that get there have already been attenuated, then, you know, it's all a question of, balancing cost and performance. But I mean,
the most
it is
famous,
worth studying.
the most famous one is on the Gold Coast in Australia. And so it's 2002, I guess it was built, it's still there. And it's the Pacific, it's Wave of the Pacific. So if it's well designed, so we met actually the designer, if it's well designed, it's a coastal engineering structure. It needs to be designed. The thing is that those reef ball, it wouldn't work. That definitely.
And then the last thing is, if you take the Point Judith Harbor of Refuge, so those breakwaters are 70 years old. They have not been well maintained or maintained even at all. They're still there, right? And they have been through, Hurricane Bob, Hurricane Sandy, and, they're probably built after 1938, but probably 1954. They may have been there already. So, it's a question of engineering design. So,
And so you talk about a submerged reef. Obviously, boating around here is a
Right.
major occupation.
yeah.
And so are these so far below the surface that they're not a navigational hazard, or
Yeah.
do they have to be very
Yeah,
sort
for
of
shallow, like, canoes and shallow speedboats, it's probably going to be okay because the freeboard is probably going to be on the order of 3 or 4 feet. But not the Brook Island Ferry, obviously.
Yeah, sure.
But you would have to mark them. There would probably be, and if they are, say, 100 to 100 yards from the beach, this is not probably a pristine fishing location for large fishing boats, right?
Right.
But again, that's why I was saying, maybe gray solution, because we consider, and this is, we consider that a reef, which is a submerged breakwater, basically, is green. But if it's emerged, it's, oh no, it's, and so the difference, ecologically, I don't think that it's so much more. So yeah, you have less transport, it can be discussed, but I think if we do the simulation, why not do a submerged too? Because, why not?
Yeah.
No,
It's
you
what
meant,
I see.
why not do an emerged?
Emerge, yeah.
Yeah, you said
emerge.
submerged.
Emerge, because
But-
I'm concerned with, because I've been saying, everybody's in boating here, we've been sailing, when you on a sailboat and there are waves and even if you know that there is a reef, it's kind of scary. So in a sailing community, maybe not doing a submerge, maybe like something elevated.
That if it's emerged, it's going to be visible. But I would say that in some countries, say take Italy, you have the Adriatic coast, which is basically a resort the entire length. I actually went there with my parents in the 1960s, and I saw the first detached breakwaters, and they all built a little tombolo and pocket beaches behind them. As a kid, I didn't know what it was, but it was fun to go run on those breakwaters. So they are all along. If you take the Eastern Mediterranean, so it's very it's I say politically charged right now, but when they built all those dams on the Nile River, they cut the sediment supply for all the Eastern Mediterranean countries, so mainly Gaza Strip and Israel, and that triggered enormous erosion. So at Alexandria, the coast moved by 2.5 kilometers. But in Tel Aviv, you take pictures, just Google Tel Aviv, you will see all the beaches have all these detached emerged breakwaters, and behind them, lots of sand and beaches, because they were able to capture whatever sand that there was and maybe bring some more, and it stayed there. So for the case, for what we just visited, we're not talking about building miles and miles of those, but where the coast and is narrow and the road is most threatened, maybe for that stretch just offshore, attenuating the waves will be the only solution. I don't know, the simulations may show it, but
And your simulations show then the effects of reefs on water currents and sand transport? And because
Absolutely.
obviously, as
It
Judy
does- it
pointed
does
out,
all.
yes, okay. So we need to know they're not
Yes.
stealing the sand from the
Absolutely,
beaches.
yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
Yes, but we use steel. It's that there is no, if you accumulate the sand there, the sand doesn't go anywhere else.
Sure.
So you do steal sand. In a way.
Steel
If you
sand.
take- No, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's, if there is sand accumulating, this sand will not go further south, further north. Reverse.
George.
Hi, George Davis. Oop, losing things here. So my question would be about the artificial reefs, but also, are there places in the world that you think are similar geologically to here, where they're using artificial reefs now that have similar slope, similar wave energy, where they're currently being employed? Or is would be this a brave new world maybe here on Block Island?
So, I didn't do new recent search, but the Pacific coast, it's not similar, but it's more wave action. You have more wave action on the Pacific coast in Australia.
Mhm.
So this is one. Caribbean,
Mhm.
not comparable totally. So the Adriatic, it's different. You have wave, but it's short waves. The Mediterranean, it's short wave. You don't have the big swell. We saw in Nice, there is a few Nice. So you can have, I don't know if you familiar. You have a lot of wind, a lot of wave, but they're short crested. So it's not. I don't see a site which is similar. I have to say it, but you have site with high wave energy.
Okay.
And I'm not gonna argument. I'm not.
Right. Well, that's something to see if we had an analogy already. That would be
Yeah.
something we
No,
could look at and talk about.
No,
Yeah.
and we can still look and try to see. So I don't know in Asia, Chiwei, if there are anything when you were in Japan. It's because they did artificial island at some point. They were big in, but so yeah. And I know it's scary to do something that it's not everywhere. Why would you? But it.
Well, that's true. It
I
shouldn't,
see-
but it's not even that. It's just, I didn't know if there was another example.
I've seen them in South Korea. I was there last summer in the
Yes.
Japan Sea, which is, fairly exposed. It's between China, Japan, and Korea. The fetch is long, so you have storms. And so they've used detached breakwaters for protecting the coast.
And where's that again? I'm sorry.
Eastern coast of South Korea.
Okay.
Wanjong.
Well, but Eastern Coast, do they have another coast? I don't know. But that's it.
They are peninsula, so they're
Yeah.
west, east, and south. So east coast of Korea.
All right. Thank you.
You want to say something? Yeah, great. Thank you.
Hi, Bryce Hall. My question is about the first two options, the vegetation and reinforcing the dune. With regard to the modeling, it would seem to me that certain assumptions would have to be made, like I'm
So,
wondering about
What we do,
right-
what we model, what we do.
Well, specifically, there are places where there are wide paths.
Yeah.
Where there are no dunes. And so obviously, if there's no dunes there, the water,
Yeah, so
these things
so
aren't
the
gonna work
model
if
is-
there's no dunes.
yeah, so the model-
Places like Scotch Beach Road, for example, do we model closing that off or is the model run with it still open?
So we discretize the site in, in this area, it's gonna be 2 by 2 meters. So 2 by 2 meters is one cell. So you can see the path, you can see the road, and you can see the vegetation. So this will be, we can make the difference between a path and the vegetation. Now we have to make some assumption about the vegetation. So the vegetation, it's gonna be a friction, basically. So when the flow arrives, it feels something more rough and it's slowing down. So it's basically how we model the vegetation. There is another way to model the vegetation. It's to assume that it's gonna be a little stick, which can bend like that. And then it's not just gonna be, and maybe Chi-Wei might go into more details about that. I don't know if you want to jump in to explain that. So it's not gonna be just a friction, it's gonna be a force. So do you want to add anything about this? I don't know, it just, if you wish.
So, what, how, in the model, how we, because we want to know, like how we model the vegetation correctly. And that would depend on what kind of parameters we input. And, so like friction is one of the options. And so, it actually depends on the species. So we have to determine, like, we have to determine that, because if we input the friction in the model, we always have like dissipation of the wave energy, but like up to what level? That's one of the questions that we have to answer correctly.
So basically, there is a state of the art of what everybody does, but there is still research question. However, we can tell you if you remove the vegetation or if you put some vegetation, we can be accurate. Now, if you tell me we're going to put this type of tall grass or this species, we cannot make the difference. We could maybe at some point, using the flexibility and but this is more like a research question, I would say, and it will not be, detailed in this study.
I'd also like to
You don't
address the
understand?
gaps.
No, I'm sorry.
Because I still don't understand if I think what I'm hearing is that if we were to commission a study, we would then tell you that we wanted these places closed or open
Oh,
or
No.
no.
no, what,
No,
what?
right now, what you have, I mean, Brian Oakley does a beautiful job of describing it. The last thing you want is like a straight flat dune. You want inundation, you want undulations. I mean, that's a healthy dune system is bumpy and weird looking, and it's not like monochromatic. But one of the important ways that the back of the dune is built is by the water that flows through those paths and down Scotch Beach Road and fills in the backside of the dune with sand. Otherwise, the main source of sand is wind for the back dune. So Brian actually describes the paths as something that could be beneficial for the dune.
Mhm.
Now we have to balance that with how much water do we want to get to the road? Because during Sandy, at every single opening in the dune, the water got to the road. It didn't get there with a lot of energy. there wasn't any erosion to the road bed in those places. But, and they filled back in, but, you know, we want to, so it's a balance. We don't want to just close up all the breaks in the dune because they actually have a function for a healthy dune system.
Maybe I'm going to add something on the modeling side. So when those models, they take the current situation by integrating the topography and the bathymetry. And so we use the data that is being measured using drones and LiDARs, and we create a digital terrain model, if you like. So if you have gaps, there will be gaps. And then the water will flow, because the model kind of simulates by using physical laws how the water moves, how the waves behave, and then how the sediment then is suspended, transported, and deposited. And so starting from an existing situation, we can run the model, and then for a given storm, some of the sand will be picked up and transported at some other places. And we can, of course, compare with the actual measurement of what happened during that storm. Now, if we want to do an intervention, one of those, then we're going to say, okay, that section is a little barren. We're going to replant it. We still keep the terrain as it is. We're going to add some roughness or maybe some other more advanced representation of the vegetation. And then we run the same storm and we can see, do we have a benefit or not? And maybe sometimes there are undesired effects that will happen because, you know, you cause positive effects here, but maybe you steal sand from somewhere. And so we can see that. And then the reinforced dune is a situation where we're going to change the dune, but not necessarily the outside of the dune. It's going to be the core that, so you basically open up the dune and you put what we call a geobag. So it's a sort of a bag made of, we call that geosynthetic stuff, which is a very resistant stuff that will last for years. And then you fill it with sand, and the core of the dune now has this stronger bag of sand. And so if part of the dune is eroding in a storm, it gets to that bag, and that bag may be considered as non-erodible in the model. And then we can then see if that would have a benefit. Because sometimes it may be beneficial that the dune erodes and that sand is used to replenish the beach. So it's always a little bit more complicated than just a straight effect. And so what was discussed was also overwash, and overwash is desirable in some situation because you need to feed sand on the back of the dune. And sometimes the overwash is, you know, not over the dune, it's on the side through little breacheways. So all at the resolution that Annette mentioned, which is 2 meters by 2 meters, we can see all these phenomena. So I hope this kind of alleviate your concerns.
Yeah, Brian teaches me something every time I speak with him. Yes, please. Oh, and I'm sorry, Martha, he was waving at me from the back, and then Martha.
Hi, I'm Jody Brotherhood. I have sort of a unique perspective here that I grew up here in the 60s and 70s, and I went away for a long time. And so I get an advantage of seeing what it was like then and what we see now instead of a continuous change over time. I grew up actually in the house that's right across from the breach on the revetment now on Spring Street. Admiralty House, yeah. So my question is, and I've seen a lot of different articles and stuff on it. One of the things I'm referred to, I think it was a video, I think by Stevens Institute a bunch of years ago. I know it's a bunch of years ago because I have it on VHS, called The Beaches Are Moving, and how it explains that at the time, hard stabilization, which was what the Armored Corps engineers was doing at the time, really doesn't work very well. And, you know, except in different things. And we can see how certain projects worked well. The new Green Jetty, when we were growing up, when the water hit that jetty, it went straight up. Now, when the water hits that jetty, it goes over. that's definitely a difference in the engineering of it. And my question is not to get too deep into the weeds here about best practices and techniques for doing this, because I'm looking at the revetment now on Spring Street, which I think is the second or third time that's been replaced, Martha, in you. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's the third time. And, when I was growing up, when we referred to riprap, we referred to things that about the size of a Toyota. Now we talk about riprap and it's the size of that chair. I mean, so the definitions are changing and things like that. But one of the things that I'm noticing on the revetment rebuild right now is that they haven't done anything to change what I would understand. I'm not an engineer. I know when to hire one. But there doesn't seem they've changed any of the what we would call the toe in at the beach that anchors that edge there, because what happened was it just basically slumped off what was there. And I mean, all those rocks they put in there years ago are still there somewhere. But how do we address, with these models and things, and my suspicion about models is at the end of the day, they basically prove that the model works, at first of all. And how do we know what we're designing here is going to, whether it's soft stabilization, soft reefs, meaning, well, not agricultural, I guess, but, weeds, things like that, that might attenuate the waveform, or submerged, emerged reefs. And how do we understand the technology today, make sure that what we're doing is gonna work? I don't mind working hard. I hate working stupid, kind of thing. And just to keep repeating what we're doing, say on Spring Street, you wanted another area of concern there. Yes, Horn Neck Road is a major thoroughfare. Imagine if Spring Street was breached completely and we didn't have that access to town for the south side of the island would be.
I'll show them Spring Street.
Yeah, it's a big thoroughfare there, and it's so I don't know if that's
Right.
coherent or not, but
No, I think you hit a lot of good points. So the first thing you said was, the fixing the beach versus letting the beach move. I mean, the best way is, of course, if you have the space, is to let the natural beach move back and forth. Now you have some of the, healthiest dunes in the state where those, further down Cocknet Road, big white dunes, they're healthy. No problem. The problem with the narrow section of the road is that the road is there and it fixes basically the space that the beach has to retreat. It cannot retreat. So there we have to think about limiting the energy of the waves that are going to reach that point. So more roughness through vegetation, maybe the reef, but you're not going to have the natural beach that can move. Right now, what you said about the different structures that don't last, well, that's a question of design. Now, I'm an engineer, some of us are engineers, but the purpose of our project is not to go into the actual design, which would be done by, coastal engineers. Once you pick a solution, they will do the design, to the best of their knowledge. Now, what you said about slumping into or sliding into the beach means that you probably need a tow berm. That's part of the standard design. If you have a low energy system, so revetment that's just straight with no tow would be okay. But here, with the energy you have, if you ask me, I'd say immediately you need a tow berm, right? Exactly the same if you do renourishment, the submerged reef could actually buttress a beach renourishment. So it could be your tow. As Annette explained, if you have to renourish all the way to the closure depths, you have to put a huge volume of sand underwater. But if you have a reef a third of the way through the profile, it blocks the sand, and then so that's a kind of a perched beach, we call that. So you have that reef which will do two uses: destroy some of the wave energy and stabilize the renourishment. So all these things can be studied. And what you said about the size of stones, it's kind of surprising because the size is fixed by the size of waves.
Right.
It's basically a cube and it goes up very fast. So the height of the wave cube is proportional to the weight of the stone. So if you double the wave height, you multiply the weight by 8.
Mhm.
So if they took that size, it's probably underestimating the maximum wave you could get. So it's a question of I assume the Corps of Engineers would know what they're doing, but
Well, yes, people have made that mistake before.
you have the big research center in Vicksburg, and I know these
Sure,
people,
yeah.
they're very good. And then
Yeah,
they create the
of course.
books and the manuals, but then the local sections,
One more quick follow-up question on terms of, we're talking about the reefs offshore. Is any consideration being given to reestablishing groins, which are 90 degrees, which would keep sand from migrating north and south on the beaches? There used to be groins there a long time ago. And people have told me that removing the groins has subtracted a lot of sand from places like closer to the Red
Right.
Jetty, where there was more sand, and now with the groins gone, there's a lot less.
yeah. So the groins, I mean, like you have them at the Harbor of Refuge, there are still groins, right? And that beach has sand. I guess there could be a possibility, but it all depends on the exact movement of sand that's going to be created. And in between the reef and the groins is sort of a little circular mound of rocks that you would put offshore. So it would have some extension across shore and some extension longshore. We've actually seen those in the Mediterranean, in the area of Nice, the big city of Nice. They've put all of those offshore, and they created little tombolos and, stopped some of the sand.
There's quite a bit difference in the waveform and frequency of waves in the Mediterranean as there are here.
Yes. So, and the wave period has an effect on the design. It basically drives some dimensions like the width of the berm. So the height of the wave drives the weight of the stones. And then the period of the waves, drives some of the other dimensions. But that can be factored into the design. So the geometry of what you build in the Mediterranean will be slightly different here, but the functionality can be similar.
I see. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Those were that was really good questions. And I just want to be clear that, I mean, this is a research project. So right now, the town is moving sand around and it's making decisions. And it's mostly based on what we've done before, what seems to have worked. And this is an opportunity for us to interact with modelers who can play games in the computer and, move things around without doing any damage to the actual beaches. And so it's a really unique chance for us to ask exactly these kinds of questions, so that when the next time we're moving sand around, we've got a little science backup on why we're doing what we're doing. It's not just because that's what seemed to have worked before or what we've always done. So, which may be still the best thing. I mean, it might be based on really sound principles, but that's what we're going to discover with this research. Martha, did you want to get up and ask a question?
That was a great segue. Thank you. A lot of things I wanted to say. My name is Martha Hall, and I have always. Oh, I should know that. Thank you. I've always lived on Block Island year round, except for about 4.5 years when I was in school. I live down the neck, and I am not of the world is going to end, the island is going to get cut in two. We're all going to die cadre. I've never believed that. I think the real problem, and I think everybody's beginning to see this, are the places where the road, like Spring Street and like out by the Salvecan, are where the road is so close to the shore now. And you talk about models, you talk about future, you talk about what's going to happen. how much history do you look at? How many old maps do you look at? How many, you all know where the beachhead is. The restaurant. Across the street from that, there used to be enough land that the town jail was over there. There was actual land. It wasn't just this mound that gets eaten into. Brian Oakley has been mentioned several times, and the one thing I remember when he was over one time, he said that 38 and 54, I'm sorry, 38 and Sandy, all bets are off. You're just not going to deal with this. You're not going to be able to prepare for every contingency, everything that's ever going to happen. But you've all been talking about this reef and the shore and the waves. And I got to tell you, I've been watching South County this past winter, and I think it feels like the wind directions have changed, or the people in South County are finally figuring out that the waves hit them. Because it seems like we've been getting those storms all these years, that they're finally getting over there, and they're losing their minds. Well, I'm sorry, but these things make me crazy. But what I really wanted to say was the biggest contributor, and this is from the Army Corps. There's a photograph out there. I'm not going to bother to go get it because I've done it at too many of these meetings and nobody ever wants to hear about it. There's a curve of water that comes around the end of the old harbor breakwater that has gradually gnawed the beach. And this was from the Army Corps in 1991 or 3, I don't remember which. We've got a whole volume in here they brought with them. And it's not that shore gets the least wave action. It gets the rest of the beach gets battered, it recovers. The dunes come back. I've lived down by Mansion Beach my whole life. I do know what I'm talking about. And the breakwater is the biggest problem. And up by Spring Street, there's a sewer outflow. And if we really want to get into it, down by the West Beach, where down by the dump at the end of the dump road where we've had lost so much land, there is the breakwater on the south side. I have to do it with my hands. I'm sorry. I can't do directions without using my hands. On the south side of the channel. And that gradually, right now there's a whole delta of sand behind that breakwater on the south side of it that filled in over 100 years, and then the sand started coming around and filling the channel. They never had to dredge that channel when I was a kid. They have to dredge it every couple of years now. And that's what you don't seem to be putting into your models. All of these man-made things that are really mucking us up even more than the natural things we can't control. I mean, there are some things we can control. I have no answers. But I just wanted those things to be put out there because I just feel like we're talking the same conversation that's been going on for a lot of years. And I'm saying the same thing about the same map that's in the hallway. And thank you.
Well, thank you. I think, we need people with the living memory of the island, just like you. And I guess we can go back in satellite images, a good number of years in time. You can even do that if you go to Google Earth now. You can really go back. So the data is out there, and certainly when we get into the project, we're going to do our homework because we don't know nearly as much about the island, of course, as you want people know. But one thing that is clear is that the future is starting to change, right? So we've observed, for instance, the past winter, we had 3 extremely strong winter storms, which we would have called northeastern storm or nor'easter, but they were southeaster. they were like really storm kissing the coast and moving up and giving us wind directions and swell directions that were very unusual. The December storm, I mentioned that before our meeting, caused waves measured near Block Island, which was the largest ever measured since we make measurements. So we have about 40 years worth of actual wave measurements made every 15 minutes. These were the largest ones, larger than Sandy, larger than Hurricane Bob. So one of the reasons is waves develop when they have enough fetch and consistent wind directions. So with those different storms, you can build sea states that we haven't seen in the past. So we're going to try to simulate some of those storms of the future, because what are you going to build is going to be for the next 20, 25, or even 50 years. We're also going to look at sea level rise scenarios, because that's a reality. You know, the sea level is going up. And there would be different scenarios, you know, by 2050 or even later in time. What can we expect? 3 feet, 5 feet? By the end of the century, probably more. And so if you do that, that affects the erosion of the beaches, that affects the behavior during storms significantly.
I didn't turn the light off. I didn't cede my time. That was another point, which really isn't relevant, isn't on stream here, but you know, everybody talks about measuring sea rise, predicting sea rise. When we have perigee tides, that's the time to go out at the low tide and see what used to be visible that we don't see anymore. And that's a very real indicator of the rise in the sea level. That isn't theoretical. Our Great Salt Pond was only opened in 1895. So things that were around the edge of that when it was first opened, we know how long it's been going. And that's sort of real hard information that isn't theoretical, that isn't done through modeling, which, I mean, I just feel like we have this great advantage. We have this little island. We live here. It's not that hard to get here most of the time. And did you look up the definition of a nor'easter this past winter? They've changed the definition. It doesn't actually say, I was annoyed, it doesn't say from the northeast anymore. It's just like a storm. It's what the world is coming to. But because we do have this smaller space, and because it is a place that lots of people are familiar with, use it. You know, we've got this great laboratory. Use the island. It's not always like it is today, but
I just want one follow-up comment about your first point, which was having to do with historical data and historical imagery. And that actually is an important source of data that's used sort of as the baseline for some of these models. So we have aerial imagery in this state, I think that goes back to 1939. And that data is used to understand how the shoreline has changed over the past almost 100 years. That's an important sort of underpinning of the modeling that goes on. So that data, that is actually useful data.
Oh, Glennie, yes.
There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Glennie LeBaron. I'm the Block Island Climate Resiliency Coordinator for the Nature Conservancy. So I've got a suggestion and then a question. So first, one of my suggestions is in the past sea level rise committees, we've discussed that there's that dredging the old harbor is going to become more common, and that there will be almost this consistent source of sand that we can use for beach nourishment. So if there's any way that this model had the capacity where we could say, you know, we have X amount of volume of sand, where do we get the most bang for our buck this year? And if that could be the sort of thing that could be like incorporated into the model so that our folks who work at the town could like use that tool to be able to make those decisions on where that goes around the beach. That could be that would be interesting. And then my question is, so when we think of these different strategies, are you also modeling how well the solutions hold up, or are you assuming that all of the interventions are working at optimal conditions? Because I know things like geotextiles, if you don't manage them right, kind of just do very little. So I'm curious if you're assessing also the like appropriateness of the intervention in the site.
Look, who else?
I'll start with your last question. We're not going to be able to do the evaluation of the solutions because that's really depending on how they have been designed, which they have not yet been designed. And one thing we are doing on the South Shore, for instance, so we are doing simulations at the scale of a storm, which is what we are planning to do here. The scale of a storm is a couple of days maximum. And of course, that's when you have a lot of changes, but then there is all the recovery period in between, which is a completely different type of modeling because the processes are completely different. So we are starting, and that's actually really starting to be done. So it's still at the research level. So there are some recent models that can attempt to do the long-term change of the shoreline in between storms. We were not going to do that here because it's, the scope of the project is much smaller in terms of time and funding. And the decision was to focus on the protection of a specific site, which is Cornet Road. Now, once we have a series of scenarios and maybe one of them becomes a leader, like probably this is what you should consider first, then perhaps with the state funds, you can do a more in-depth study, which would include engineering and durability and resiliency and all these things, which wouldn't be in the scope of this project, right? Back to your first question, when you said dredging, where is the best place to put it? Maybe also some of our considerations for renourishment may identify where there is a need for sediment, right? Now, the source from dredging is, of course, the best source because it's local sand. It matches the granulometry of what you have on the beach. And this is the number one concern when you do renourishment. If you put a different sand, it's going to behave differently. It's going to be eroded differently. If you can put the exact same sand, that's perfect. So we'll do our best to provide guidance if we can. And we could work with you if you want to get involved and whatever knowledge you have that would be useful to the project.
I think we're very interested, the town is very interested in the work that this group is doing on the South County side because we're so interested in Galilee and what's happening in Galilee and how are we going to be able to maintain that port of Galilee as our primary source of connectivity. So so it's the work that they're doing on South County is also of great interest to us. Is there anything else from the audience? We're kind of, oh, please, George, we're kind of getting close to the end of our time.
So when is the expected completion date of this modeling?
We were supposed to start
In June, I think you were supposed to start.
So we still don't have the funding.
Yeah.
So but it should be there. So we will start, let's say, July officially, and then it's 2 years.
So 2020, middle of 2026, something like that. Okay. I won't look for my Christmas present this year to be the model, but that's good. I can
And I'm
take it.
grateful that as part of this project is the report back to us.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that Block Island offers is a really interested populace and people that are willing to, citizens that are willing to work with the scientists and, get them around to places and talk about what our experiences are and what our concerns are. And this is very elegant.
And it's very precious.
Yeah.
Because, it's a horrible expression, but I think it's true, the details. We need to know the details because we need to be able to reproduce that, to trust the model. So I don't know who asked that question. How can we trust the model? So this idea of trusting is that we need to spend a lot of time reproducing the current, the way they are. So we don't have the current, but the sea level, the erosion where, during that event, this bridge, and once we have all those things set up, we trust the model. So then we can play and change, the scenarios. So all that, we have data, we have Brian data, we have, LiDAR data, but, knowledge of people. I'm living close to the wall in Narragansett. I know that the wave are hitting specifically that point. It's not written anywhere. I know that this point is focusing. And you all know that. You have these
Right.
little things. And we see that in the model. Sometimes I see, oh, it's focusing there. Is it a reality? So I just, if we all together, it's just making it better, because, and then once you trust the model, you have more, the scenario will have more credibility. So, and again, what we have to say, this is something interesting, but we're not going to solve the whole world, as I said, it's a scenario, that's it, and I wish we could go in the future. There is some research in that. We have proposal in that to go further in the future, but we all know the uncertainty is growing once you go in the future. So it is an interesting exercise, scientific exercise. The result will be valid for specific storm and specific designs, the way we put them. And
But all of this is
Just-
really useful for making decisions about what do we do with the dredged sand? What's the best place to put it? Maybe it's exactly where it is right now. It's, right in front of the beachhead. Maybe that's exactly what we should be doing. Or maybe there's another solution. But what is it? And we want to, it's just a way of informing the next steps for the town. And this is a project that the town, I mean, these people are helping us out and we don't even have to give them any money to do it. I mean, and I think it's really important. One of the things that we're trying to do is attract attention to Block Island. For example, when Storm Tools was developed, it was developed for the whole state except Block Island. And it was, Malcolm Spaulding and his students that finally did Storm Tools for Block Island. We want this attention. We want to get these kinds of solutions, ideas presented to us in an interactive way where we're giving them ideas and they're giving us ideas. But there is a responsibility then on our end that we keep showing up for them too, that we keep interacting and keep our side of the relationship alive is really also very important. Yes.
On that, so what do we do with the sand? One thing, understanding the currents, understanding what the jetties do, understanding what red jetty does, what green jetty does, how that does, and the way Army Corps used to dredge, it might be that we put the sand not back where it was, but where it's going to accrete naturally back onto the beach, because we do understand that naturally accreting dunes are much more stable than just dumping a pile of sand there, due to the polymorphic nature of that material. And if it's allowed to accrete naturally, slowly with vegetation and stuff, it's going to be more stable. So maybe we take it out of the harbor and we just put it onto the, like, that'd be the north side of the red jetty there, and let the currents put it back where it would go from, where it's being scoured out of now, as Martha suggested. We put it back there and see if that doesn't add it back.
Right. I think and we can do that in modeling before we do it with a grain of sand. Yeah, it's really good. I am going to wrap this up. It's been because we're coming to a close at the end of our time. But I want to thank you all so much. I want to thank our guests from the University of Rhode Island. Thank you for engaging with us and having such a stimulating dialogue. Thanks to you guys for your excellent questions and for where your concerns are. I really hear about the Bluffs. Spring Street it's both of those are like different problems with different solution scenarios, but they, it's like anything. A problem area just stays on the list, and the town just keeps, it has to go into the hazard mitigation plan, it has to go into the comprehensive plan. We have to keep these issues alive. So I really appreciate all of you coming today and sharing your ideas and concerns with us. And is there anything else that you guys want to say for the good of the group?
One of the reasons we were successful with this proposal is because of the engagement with your group. And, and the planned engagement with all the stakeholders. We don't call them stakeholders now. Participants, partners, right. But we were actually under the impression that there could be additional funding for this kind of activity. There would be a next round of proposal pretty soon. And if you have new problems that can be turned into a proposal, that it's never guaranteed that it's going to be funded, but that's something we can do.
Yeah, just following up on that, what is the anticipated schedule that you'll be coming back to one town to have these kind of interactions? Is it quarterly or once a year, or is there any anticipated?
We could do every 6 months.
I don't remember. I think it was supposed to be every 6 months, I think. Yeah, I can. It's usually Pam who should do that, but
Yeah, so there will be a regular presence, and not maybe the whole team, but.
Yeah, so 2 years, I think maybe twice a year for 2 years. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that sounds great. Yeah, so twice a year for reporting.
Communication speak. At the end of this process, you're gonna get somebody who's gonna say,
Why didn't you?
why didn't you do that?
Yeah, right. I know. I know. We accept this as a truism. Oh, thanks you guys so much. This is really great. I really appreciate it. And thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, we didn't decide, yeah. We didn't discuss that. It was something, but they cannot have. So I thought I want to go back to like historical because that one at the Sunday lights, December, weird, I think, and then change the figure around. Yeah, because we with them and used to be to do the communications. And he was coming back, but it's impossible. And they were saying, oh, this is something extreme, it will never happen. But if you say, then it means. So I think we need, there's so many things to discuss. So when I was doing this few slides, I was on the side, starting to think about more detail. And it's overwhelming. So I was trying, so I learned that interesting minimum, don't talk too much, because then, people will, I think everybody was giving, yeah. So, but it's, now we need to do it right. It's, I was saying now we need to do it right.
This is entirely from scratch. Take all of them.
We take the topography, the bathymetry,
including, all the break windows and all
everything. Everything is in it, and then you put the wave in boundary conditions. So you simulate the waves and enter the domain. You put the storm surge.
Yes.
Everything is fully coupled. So you're gonna, when they break, release energy, sea level is gonna go higher. So it's a really good model, really good.
So
it's
how
thank
long,
you too.
how long
Yeah, very
does it
interesting.
take? Thinking about the program, how long does it take to actually build what you think is going to be
The model.
Yes.
Yeah, so Cherry is gonna work on that, so so it took, I would say, a few months to, so it all depends on the data, so you can say, oh, it works, but then you look into details and you change. it, you
Yes,
change it.
right, right.
So I would say, I wish that by the end of the summer, she will have a calibration with maybe Sandy and the December storms. And then try to reproduce the patterns. So when we look, so we look to Brian's other profiles, and maybe we need to go back and change it. So it's easy, so you can have people you say, oh, and speech is doing that, that one is careful calibration. And some people believe it, the modern thing. But as I said, you know, the detail matters. The details matter. So as much data as you have, the more you know how and again, so what we need to be careful, you know, in the what we're gonna see, is what we Cherry will say we didn't talk about, you know, the design storm. We're gonna use a Sandy light storm or a December light storm.
Yes.
And we're gonna see if this would occur, this is one of it. But that's it. You know, we're not gonna be able to say this is the solution. I would say if I would be a consultant, what you would do in consulting, you would do like random simulation of all the wave climate. And you would do like a statistical study. And it's a totally, some Monte Carlo. So it's a totally different approach. It's not what the proposal. It's not that we cannot do it. It's not what the proposal.
Right.
You know, so, and again, it's a very small proposal, very small budget. It's so I think we can further budget. We can still do something very informal. But let's say, okay, we like the design. We would need to do, or a consultant, somebody would need to do like a Monte Carlo simulation to show statistically this will work. You think that it will be a different step. And then there is also the long term. So we wrote a proposal, so Kiwi was in the second while we invited Kiwi because he's in this other NOAA proposal, which is focusing on long term. You know, but it's not, you know, all that. It's conceptually it's simple. You want to do it all, but it takes time. You know, you know how it is. You know, but it's so interesting to have a research project that is so practical. You know, so
So nice.
Yeah.
I mean, I was thinking too. You know, maybe next winter we'll get some, you know, new storms, and you can see if the model that you produced up to that point actually predicts what the storm actually did.
Yeah.
So you're invited out after a big storm and that first boat coming out.
Well,
might be a little rough.
you can also, you know, ask us, you know, to do some June profiles right after, see what the changes are.
But we so lucky to have Brian. You know Brian. Okay?
Oh yeah. We're Brian on the island.
You do his profile?
Yes, we are the
So that's what
guys.
he said, I have my people.
Yes, we are his people.
We are.
I mean, yeah, I've been doing this since the very first profile.
Okay.
I've been,
I've only been out here 5 years.
Right, but we were here for number one.
So that's the key. You know, we're producing this profile, and again, it's not going to be the same thing, but if we can have the same crest height, the same. So what we do is you look at the crest. We look at the mean subaerial eroded volume, so the volume eroded be above water, above the mean sea level, and then we look at breach, being able to reproduce when it's breaching or overwash.
Yes.
And basically what it does, in the South Shore, we reproduce the breach. we will produce a big area of overwash.
Yes.
And the mean subariable deep volume for given storm. So good enough, I would say, it's not, that doesn't make any difference. Some people can say, oh, you have 30 centimeters of difference. Yes, what does it mean? Nothing, it's not that. So, but, yeah, so it's gonna be a good experiment, we will see.
Indeed. Something like that spot right by inside of the beacon, across from the beachhead, we noticed it was coming out on the far side of the breakwater. Obviously there isn't a huge amount of wave emission. That's the one we're losing the sediment source.
Yeah.
So that, might need a different treatment. That's where we're putting the sediment current into it. So that's also for people who, so the very first place we stopped.
Yeah,
The surfers.
So where would they go? So there, out of the, so the circuit, have a basket. Let's map it.
And I was just thinking, you put a brief down where the surfers are, that's.
No, they're gonna.
It's commercial.
And again, I don't care, I'm not saying, you're weak. It's just the only thing we
I
can
know,
break in the energy, and again, the best thing would be to let everything go, but why does it, don't tell me that I don't have any battery. You don't? Do you have Google?
Others, probably can use my Google.
I never saw that yeah, so this is, yeah.
Assuming in
Yeah.
This is what.
Okay. Shall we
Can I use
listen
this?
to?
Can I
Yes,
point
yes,
it?
yes.
So that first place we stopped, I think, we looked, we
Yeah.
walked over the
Yeah,
block.
yeah.
That was about, what was it? Was it past beach? Yeah, it was right about here.
Yeah.
No, it was right there.
Make it bigger.
It was right about in here.
Yeah, that is about here.
And this is
The
the
parking.
spot where, yeah,
Yeah.
the parking right there, I guess. And surfers, people that use surfboards,